Today we're going to be looking at how you can create your very own image classification using Marqo's brand new e-commerce embedding models. Let's dive straight into it. For this video we're going to be running all of our code in this Google Colab notebook, and I'll put a link to this in the description and in the pinned comment. Now if you're unfamiliar with how Google Colab works, I have created this blog here, which is very simple, kind of guide you through all of the steps that you need to getting set up. Google Colab itself is incredibly easy and I honestly love it so much. So if you are a beginner, then make sure to check out this article, which I'll also put in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, as a quick side note, if you're interested in looking at a text version of this, obviously we have the Colab notebook itself, but I've also created an article that guides you through the coding as well. So if you're interested, then check that out. I'll also put that in the description and in the pinned comment. But without further ado, let's dive straight into image classification with embedding models. So there's a lot of information here. This first section here is basically just saying that we're going to be loading these models using Hugging Face transformers. So that's a Python library. And these embedding models are actually as part of Marqo's brand new release of their embedding models. So here is the Hugging Face. Again, I'll put this in the description if you're interested. But these are the two embedding models that Marqo have just released that we're going to be using for classification today. They are e-commerce specific, so we're going to add some items specifically to e-commerce and use that to classify. Now, as part of the launch, Marqo also released some data sets that you can play around with and some Hugging Face spaces where you can try out the models yourself. This classification here is very similar to what we're going to be building today, so I encourage you to check it out and play around with it. That's a little bit of background about the embedding models that we're going to be using. Now, for those of you that don't know what an embedding model is, embedding models are a machine learning model that takes text, images, other types of data and represents it in a numerical format. And this is what is known as an embedding. Now, if you think about having text or images represented in a numerical way, we can then look at similarities between different texts and different images because they will be represented in the vector space. So the word cat and the word dog we would expect to be close together in a vector space. The first thing we're going to do is load an embedding model, and for this we're going to be loading this model here, which is the Marqo e-commerce L model, and again going back to Hugging Face, that's this model here. Now this section here, so this cell here where we are installing certain libraries, this actually isn't needed for this video. It will be needed for the next video where we look at how you can load these models with OpenClip. This Google Colab actually gives you the option to run Hugging Face transformers, so the classification with that library, and also OpenClip. We're not worrying about OpenClip today, we're just using Hugging Face transformers, so you can ignore this cell here. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to run the first cell, and I'm going to talk you through what's happening here. So firstly, we import all of our relevant modules that we need for this demo, for this classification. Then we're going to load the model. So this is the model specifically from Hugging Face, and you'll notice that it's the exact same name as we have here on Hugging Face. And then we're going to define our model. So we're going to load our model here using auto model from transformers. And we're also going to create the processor using auto processor again from transformers. And so this first step here is basically defining the model and processor that we're going to use for our classification. And again, like I mentioned, this is an embedding model specifically for e-commerce. And so you'll notice here that we are downloading the model. And interestingly enough, actually, when you download the model, it'll add a little download onto here. You might see this increase if you run this a few times and download the model. So I'll come back once the model has successfully loaded. Another great thing about these embedding models is that they can actually be used with Marqtune, which can be found on Marqo Cloud. And this is an embedding training platform. And so these e-commerce models are great as foundation models for e-commerce platforms that they can then fine-tune on their specific catalogs to improve even further. If you're interested in learning more about Marqtune, then I'll put a link in the description. Great, we have the model and processor defined. Now the next steps that we want to do is define the items that we want to classify and then also prepare the data. So the first thing that we do here is we create a list of e-commerce items. Now we have things like laptop, notebooks, books, hair straighteners, you name it. Feel free to add as many different e-commerce items that you want in here. Obviously, when we then input certain images into our classifier later, this is the only text that the embedding models have access to. So for example, let's take something that's not here. Let's say something like a cheese grater, let's say, and because it's not there, if we were to then take an image of a cheese grater and put it into our classification, then the embedding models haven't been fed that type of item, and so it won't classify it correctly. And so that's something to note with this classification system, is the more items you put in here, the better, because your embedding model is seeing a variety of different items that it can then classify correctly. So again, like I said, feel free to add as many as you want. The Hugging Face space that I mentioned in our collection here, so this e-commerce classification, this actually uses around 200 items, so feel free to add as many different items as you want in here. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tokenize this text. So we're going to take these e-commerce items and tokenize it, and we're going to use that. We're going to do that using the processor that we've just defined above here. Fantastic. So we're tokenizing our text inputs, which are the e-commerce items, and now we're going to define an image URL that we want to classify. So this image classification system can take images online. So if I click on this now and I open it up, we can see it's an image of a helmet. And I'll show you how you can change this and play around with it at the end. So we have this image of a helmet. It's a URL image. As we can see, we can open it on our browser and we just define it here. And like I said, you can replace this with any image of your choice. Now, what we'll do is we'll just fetch and process this image. So that's all this section is doing here. We're basically saying, okay, we want to get this URL, which is here. And then we want to say that if it's a correct status, so if it retrieves it correctly, so if we fetch it and there's no error, then we're going to define the image here. Now, again, if you can't retrieve this URL, we're going to say raise this error because we can't retrieve it. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, I wanted to show you exactly what this image looked like. You might end up taking a URL from somewhere random and not know exactly what it looks like. Obviously, you can just click on it like I did, but again, it's helpful for the tutorial to see exactly what URL image we have there. And so, yeah, we're showing the image using standard matplotlib. So that's the image. It's a bicycle helmet, fantastic. And we're going to be using this to classify. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst us might notice that, yes, we have a bicycle helmet in our e-commerce items. So make sure that whatever image URL you put in here, you have it in your e-commerce items. The next step, which we can see here, is processing the image itself. So once we have created the image and we've displayed it here, we can process it the same way that we process the text using the processor that we defined earlier. And this section here is just saying it's moving to the appropriate device, so GPU or CPU, for efficient processing, because obviously GPU is much faster. So that's what this little line does here, and the model itself will move to either of these devices. And yeah, we then create our image inputs and text inputs here. Now, the next step, and I think this actually might be the penultimate step, is encoding both the text and images into features using the model. So we take the image and text features, which we define here. We're saying we want to get these from the model, which we do. And obviously image inputs and text inputs are what we've defined here. So we obtain image features and text features. We want to normalize these features, as is very common in machine learning. And then once we have normalized these features, we want to calculate the probability and get the top 5 predictions. So what this section does here is it basically sorts the items based on their confidence scores, and then we will display the top 5 most relevant predictions. So for example, if we inputted the image of the bicycle helmet, we would expect the bicycle helmet to come top, and what other predictions the model itself made. So that's just this section here, calculating probabilities, and we get the top 5 predictions and we define them here. Now all that's left to do is display these top 5 predictions. As we guessed it, the bicycle helmet here. Now I just realised that I haven't actually been running this code, so let's just go back to running it. So let's have a look here. So we got the processor, we run this code, and again this will just show the image. This is the process text and in images. And we compute features and normalize. Again, this shouldn't take too long, and then once we've done that, we can queue display top 5 items. Fantastic. As we expected, bicycle helmet comes out with 1%. Now, it's important to note that these values that you'll get out here should actually be times 100. So these are given by 1, and there would be like 0.01 if that was the case. So these should each be multiplied by 100, and after this video I think I'll update this code so that it does that. Now we can see, like I said, bicycle helmet is the top predicted item. We also have book, glasses, plates and microwave, but again they are all 0. So let's have a look at maybe adding a different URL into here. Let's have a look at our items that we had. So maybe we want to get some perfume, for example. We're going to type in perfume, images. We'll go to images. Let's have a look. Let's take, I quite like this one. And then we're going to just say open image in new tab. And this should, there we go. Now we can take this URL here, we can copy it and we can paste it into here. So now we just have to save this and rerun these sections again. Now when we run this, we plot the image and we can see it's the perfume. Now we'll just run these sections again and see what the top 5 items are for this particular image. Now, like I said, feel free to add some more items into here, whatever items you want. Obviously e-commerce items specifically, because these embedding models that we've used are for e-commerce, and feel free to play around with different URLs that you want to do there. The classification Hugging Face space that we have here, which I'll load, actually allows you to upload an image yourself. So if you want to have a play around with this and try uploading images as well as providing image URLs here and classifying them, then you can do that as well. So let's have a look. Fantastic, as expected, perfume is the top prediction. So that's exactly how you can perform image classification with Marqo's brand new e-commerce embedding models and using specifically the Hugging Face Transformers library. Now, if you're interested in seeing how we can do this very similarly with OpenClip, the code is slightly different, but still a fantastic library to use, then check out the other YouTube video. And if you're interested in seeing how you can actually build a search application with these models, then I'm also releasing a video, so check out the YouTube channel for that video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.